I'm Gemma Baker and I'm the Head of Employability for Aspiring Solicitors. Shortly after leaving university, I started work at a leading international law firm in the graduate recruitment department, having never worked in a law firm before and not really understanding what graduate recruitment was about. And I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed working with students. I enjoyed working with partners who were interested in the development of the students. And I stayed in graduate recruitment for a further 9 years, working ultimately for the final 5 years as a manager. I looked after 100 trainees at the first firm I worked at and really enjoyed seeing them develop into successful qualified solicitors. I then moved to another law firm which was far more US focused. However, I didn't have the time to really feed back to applicants the way I wanted to be able to spend time with them, giving them really constructive advice. And that's why I left the city and moved to becoming head of employment at a law school. At the law school, I worked with largely GDL and LPC students, many of whom had been applying for training contracts and vacation schemes for at least 2 years and were really reaching the end of their tether. There was a lot of frustration simply because they couldn't understand why they weren't getting through to interview or assessment centre stage, and that's where I came in. I have very much a tough love ethos, which means that my aim is to make sure each student realises their aspirations, and I do that by critiquing their work, always constructively, and the aim is to make sure that each student is given realistic and achievable advice, enabling them to move on to the next stage. I met Chris about 2 years ago at an event at the law school I was working at the time, and Chris talked to me about his aims and his ethos and what he wanted to achieve. And having been the head of employability and knowing how essential it was for students to receive really constructive and accurate advice, I was really impressed, and it was an organisation I wanted to join straight away. I think Chris and I work brilliantly together. I think that we're very, very different, but I think that melds really, really well, and it's certainly been the most enjoyable 18 months of my career so far.